When I say care, you say not cages. Care.
Not cages.
Care.
Not cages.
Care.
Not cages.
All right. Herbert, I think they're ready for you. Y'all, we're about to get started, and I'm just so grateful to bring my colleague, Herbert, who is a leader in the Unlock the Box DC Coalition. Everybody give it up for Herbert.
Good morning. How everybody doing this morning? I'd like to thank you all for being here this morning. As Kiki say, we're here trying to unlock the box. Unlock the box. Unlock the box. Care. Not cages. Care. Not cages. Again, I thank you all for being here. We got a host of speakers coming here this morning to present to you all and tell you all about unlocking the box. You know, their experiences with solitary confinement, ending torture, and erasing what these society has put on us. I come to you all right now as a survivor of solitary confinement, as a returning citizen. And in my journey, one of the things that really got on me and that was really a bigger issue for me was being trapped in that cage and you hearing someone else banging and kicking and screaming and yelling and you not really knowing how to help them. What you can do to subdue what they going through. You don't have no understanding of what to do and nobody's coming to assist them. So that's my motivation right now. I couldn't help them then, but I can help now. I could come here right now and stand here and protest and share this message and share what's going on to you all and what's going on in society and what's going on behind these walls. So again, I thank you all for being here. I thank you all for coming and showing your support. And with this, I would like to turn it over to Reverend T.C. Morrow to give you an invocation for the day. Unlock the box. Unlock the box. Unlock the box.
Good morning. I'm Reverend T.C. Morrow. I'm the pastor for Public Witness and Ecumenical Connection at Foundry United Methodist Church in Ward 2, and I'm also on the staff of the National Religious Campaign Against Torture, and we are glad to bring faith leaders to the movement to end solitary confinement. As we gather today to uphold dignity and not cages, human rights, not harm, may the holy be with us. There is so much happening around the world and in our communities. Let us take a moment to pause, to ground ourselves for the work of the day. May we be strengthened as we advocate for peace, the inherent dignity of all people, and for strong communities that are safe for everyone. May God and all the ways we experience the divine be with us today and all days in the future as we advocate for the Erase Act. Amen.
Stayed on freedom. I woke up this morning with my mind. Stayed on freedom. I woke up this morning with my mind. Stayed on freedom. Hallelujah. 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 Hello, everyone. My name is Makia. People who love me call me Kiki. Thank you for joining us in song. We will be singing, we will be chanting throughout today's rally to connect us to our radical tradition of organizing. I am so proud to introduce Natasha White. Natasha is a formerly incarcerated survivor of solitary confinement, served 15 years in the New York prison system before becoming a prominent advocate for criminal justice reform. As a campaign leader in the Close Rikers movement, she passionately fought for decarceration, participating in initiatives such as bail reform, fair parole, and the Less is More campaign. During the COVID-19 pandemic, Natasha became a community organizer for the Halt Solitary campaign, achieving a historic victory in New York in March 2021. Recognized for her activism, she received the Citizen of the Year Award in 2022. from the National Association of Social Workers. She is the Director of Community Engagement at Interfaith Action for Human Rights, representing the Unlock the Box campaign in Virginia and Maryland since January 2023. Everyone give it up for Natasha White.
Anwar, Khalif, Shenandoah, Matthew, Laylene, Julio, Shane, Antonio, Christopher, Jeremy, Bradley, Shannon, Jamie, Jaquan, Nicholas, Henry, Jeffrey, Malik, Pliny, Wanda, Angelo, Tyler, Brandon, Jose, John, Marshall, Rashawn, Greg, Freddie, Daryl. These are some of the names of people who have died while or because of solitary confinement in the United States since 2015. This is a tiny fraction of the total amount of deaths by suicide, homicide, or severe illness. Nevertheless, they represent a huge loss for many. These people had loved ones. They had children, husbands, and wives. They were human beings, and they were discarded like trash. And let me remind you, the United Nations deems solitary confinement torture. Every day, someone attempts suicide in our jails and prisons, with suicide being the leading cause of death in jail. The rate of suicide in jails is over 2 times that of the general public. Mysterious deaths, complications from severe physical and mental illnesses, and overdoses are the leading causes of death in prison. If you're inside and sent to solitary, you don't know if you're coming out in cuffs or in a body bag. My name is Natasha White, and I am a formerly incarcerated survivor of solitary confinement. I am the Director of Community Engagement at IAHR. My journey has been one of resilience, transformation, and an unwavering commitment to ensure that no one else endures the horrors I face with those cold and isolating prison walls. However, so many others are permanently scarred from the torturous practice of solitary confinement. Many find only escape in death. I stand before you as someone who spent a total of 15 years behind bars, with my first 4 years etched in the dark corners of a solitary confinement cell, no larger than the average apartment bathroom. The moment I arrived at Bedford Hills Correctional Facility, I was cast into the depths of SHU, left completely alone, grappling with isolation and the echoes of my despair for 19 agonizing days. When the warden finally appeared, her words marked my fate. Solitary confinement for the entirety of my stay in her prison, is what she said. What was her explanation? What was the justification for condemning me to 4 years of torture? She said it was a security risk linked to my husband's rank and gang affiliation. Let's be clear, I was put in solitary confinement with no due process or recourse simply because my husband, not me, was an alleged member of a gang. And let me remind you, the United Nations deems solitary confinement torture. Torture right here on the soil of the United States. And this happens every day. Most of the time, 85% of the time, this torture is used for minor rule violations and retaliation for speaking out about abuse. For 4 long years, that cramped cell became my entire world. A world completely devoid of sunlight, filled with the stench of feces, forever punctuated by the anguished cries of women trapped in adjacent cells. I never received a visit, a letter, or a package from the outside world. No interaction with anyone except prison staff. I was sexually and physically abused, filled with so much anger that the darkness consumed me. The trauma still lingers, and it's possible that it forever will. Manifested even in my dreams to this day. The horrors of solitary were not only my own, they extended to those trapped around me. I remember listening and banging on my door as a woman in the cell next to me took her own life. The sound of her struggle to grasping the wall with her feet as she hung herself is forever etched in my memory. Once free from solitary confinement, the poison extended beyond those prison walls to my marriage. My husband, too, endured 12 years of solitary, leaving him emotionally disconnected, and our marriage irreparably damaged. His oath to love and protect transformed into a nightmarish reality, forcing me to seek refuge in a domestic violence shelter and then relocating from New York to Virginia. This is personal. Never do I want another woman to experience what I had to endure. I do not want her to understand the fear of being confined, the fear of whether or not she will make it out alive, and then the fear of what she could become because of confinement. I don't want any woman to feel like me, a stranger to the ones she loves. So I dedicated my life to ending the inhumane practice of solitary confinement, beginning as a community halt organizer, with a big win in March prohibiting long-term isolation in alignment with the Mandela rules, that any more than 15 days is deemed torture. Since then, continuing to fight as the Director of Community Engagement at Interfaith Action for Human Rights since January. I'm representing both Maryland and Virginia campaigns to end solitary confinement. I met with Maryland Representative Jamie Raskin's office yesterday about the federal bill to end Solitary Confinement Act. Our leaders must acknowledge this practice inflicts immeasurable suffering and burdens on our country's budget to spend on community resources. Studies show that states that limit solitary confinement, excuse me, this is a long one, y'all, save millions of funds that could be redirected to higher wages for correction officers and essential personnel. In this country, there are about 122,000 people in confinement on any given day. Even though research shows that solitary confinement fails to enhance the safety of both residents and prison administrators, contrary to conventional wisdom, isolating people in solitary does not yield any of the intended benefits. The time to act is now. Erase Act of 2023 is a beacon of hope for DC. I'm grateful for the opportunity to support your coalition in this campaign for safety, freedom, and dignity for people like me. At Interfaith Action for Human Rights, we are working on Virginia and Maryland statewide legislations. Head to the unlockthebox.com website for more information to join the fight. Together, we could create a future where no one suffers in the darkness of isolation, where the echoes of despair can be replaced by the voices of a society that values the dignity and worth of every person. I'm Natasha White. Thank you for your time.
Yes, I'd like to thank Natasha again.
All right.
Unlock
The box.
Unlock
The box.
That's the part I get done with.
Solitary confinement amounts to torture, and this is a violation of human rights. Solitary confinement inflicts immense physical, social, and emotional suffering, and does not make suffer communities. It does not make for suffer communities. Yet it is practiced extensively in DC jails. This year we have a chance to end torture in DC jails by passing the Erase Solitary Confinement Act. And with that, I would like to introduce the Councilmember Nadeau and let her step forward because she's introduced this bill for us to Congress. Thank you.
Good morning, everybody.
Good morning.
So I want to thank the Unlock the Box Coalition for choosing me to introduce the Erase bill this time around. I've been asked why I'm taking up this piece of legislation, what it is about this bill that's important to me. And the answer is that in all my tenure as council member, I've turned my attention to justice, to uplift the voices and experiences of people who feel unheard. And I'm proud of that reputation. Recently, the United States Supreme Court refused to hear an appeal by an inmate who was kept in solitary confinement and was deprived of physical exercise and fresh air for 3 years. 3 years. The cramped confinement prevented him from stretching his limbs and breathing fresh air. During that time, his mental and physical health was compromised. I won't go into the horrific details of what he experienced, but I will say that it was so bad he had to go on suicide watch. My point here is this: how many more stories do we need to hear before we accept that solitary confinement is inhumane? It's torture. It destroys the body, mind, and soul. It's cruel and unusual punishment. Although this happened at a state prison in Illinois, the DC jail also has a history of excessively using solitary confinement. In 2018, according to the DC Department of Corrections' own numbers, 1 in every 12 inmates was held in solitary at any given time. This is roughly 3 times the national average of people held in solitary in jails across the country. People are not always mentally ill when they enter solitary confinement, but by the time they are released, their mental health is severely compromised, and it makes rehabilitation of the person nearly impossible. And these returning citizens are released directly back into our community after spending years in isolation. Because of this, long-term solitary confinement goes beyond the problem of just prison conditions. It has a direct and negative effect on public safety and creates a community health problem. That's right, it has the opposite effect of what those using it hope to accomplish. It's a dangerous and tragic practice that removes human dignity and endangers the well-being of inmates and the staff who must work in such an environment. Solitary is described by the UN as psychological torture. If the goal of incarceration is rehabilitation, this is not it. The inhumane practice has no place in institutions controlled by the DC government. And I want to remind people that DC is not doing anything revolutionary here with this bill. In fact, we're catching up to other jurisdictions. Between 2018 and 2022, 25 states restricted the use of solitary confinement for young people. 30 states restricted the use of solitary confinement for vulnerable groups. 3 states imposed a 15-day limit on solitary confinement. 29 states improved reporting and oversight mechanisms. In 2022, I co-sponsored the Erase Bill when it was introduced by Councilmember Che. Before that, I co-introduced another solitary confinement bill in 2017, and as you can see, this is important to me. I'm proud of my colleagues who co-introduced this bill with me. Councilmembers Bonds, Lewis George, Robert White, Allen, McDuffie, Parker, and Henderson. And now let me tell you a little bit about what the legislation does. It would ban the use of solitary for any reason, with the exceptions of short-term suicide prevention and medical isolation. The bill ensures all residents receive at least 8 hours of out-of-cell time except for limited isolation due to medical necessity or to prevent self-harm. It guarantees access to appropriate medical and mental health care, and if DOC can't provide it, they must move the person to a hospital or other healthcare setting. It requires DOC to educate residents about mental health and other services available to them when placed in confinement, and gives residents a vehicle for filing a grievance when the protocols are not followed. It requires DOC, when it moves a resident to a new cell, to simultaneously move the resident's property. It ensures that the public is informed and that the council can play its oversight role by requiring DOC to publish a plan to reduce the use of solitary and requiring DOC to collect and publish data on the ongoing use of solitary. I want to reiterate that I'm glad you're all here today. It shows your passion and perseverance. The stories you share, the poems you recite, and the music you sing is all part of the advocacy process. And it makes a difference, perhaps more than you realize. So as you head into the Wilson building today and speak with council members and staff, know that they are paying attention and taking notice. Your presence makes a difference. We have a real chance at passing the Erase Bill. Go make your voices heard. Thank you.
They break us down. Ain't no justice in this town. Ain't no justice in this town. Ain't no justice in this town.
That's why we're here to shut it down.
That's why we're here to shut it down. All right. I'd like to thank Councilmember Nadeau and for introducing Unlock the Box, and all the other council members that joined in and supported this bill with her. Next, I'd like to introduce Damon Jones. Damon Jones I met in USP Lee County back in 2014-15. Damon Jones just recently returned home, and he got with National Reentry Lab Network, and his journey towards unlocking the box started with DC, and he's here with DC now to support us.
All right. Go.
Thank you. And y'all kind of set me up, because I had to follow Natasha and the councilwoman. So hello, everybody. Everybody excited? Yeah. That's right. Thank you, Natasha and Councilwoman Herbert. My name is Damon Jones, and last month I completed 28 years of incarceration. All right. I was incarcerated from June 1995 to last month. And I don't tell you this looking for sympathy, because I'm far from pathetic, despite, And I'm also not looking for shock value. I just need you guys to know my credentials, and speaking of what I'm gonna speak on today, and know that I do have the credentials. I would estimate that at least 10 of the 28 years of my confinement was spent in solitary confinement. Now, you heard my colleague Herbert, he referred to solitary confinement as torture. Now, do all you believe that? Yes. That, solitary confinement amounts to torture? Yeah. Well, even still, let me give you an example of what Herbert was talking about. Let me see. I got a project for you. Well, that might be kind of extreme, but let me see. Okay, when you get home and you go to use the bathroom and you close and lock the door, imagine you no longer have control over the lock on that door or the ability to open the door. Now, where the bathtub is, just try to imagine that's a steel bunk bed. And the big pretty mirror, just imagine that's a square sheet of stainless steel about the size of a sheet of paper that gives you a distorted vision of yourself. Now sit there on the edge of your bathtub bunk, say sit there for maybe an hour, however long it takes for you to get the idea of what I mean. Now, try to imagine having to stay in that locked bathroom cell 24 hours a day. Now, on top of that, imagine being in some type of adverse mental state while you're sitting there. Because remember, you're not being sent to solitary confinement except for an adverse situation. You're not just going there just to be going there. Something has to be going on for you to get sent to solitary confinement to start. Whether you had to defend yourself, defend your property. Okay, let me try it like this. Imagine you're in your car or your workplace, and you're confronted with an aggressive individual, whereas though you have to defend yourself. I'm just trying to get you into the mind state, into the mental mind state that a lot of the people that's in solitary confinement are faced with. So just imagine that. The traumatization of fearing for your life or your safety, and then being placed in these conditions. Now, imagine instead of being allowed to be consoled by your loved ones or aided by a professional therapist, you're just locked there for an undetermined amount of time. So what they do, they tell you that you're under investigation, An investigation can last from 30 to 90 days, is what they'll tell you. So, just imagine being locked in your bathroom cell for even a month without being told anything. Too many times I found myself in this predicament when officers would walk by hourly, and basically they just walking by to see if you've committed suicide or if you're attempting to commit suicide. Because that's what they would tell you when you try to speak with them. What is your emergency? Is your life in danger? Are you going to hurt yourself? And I mean, this usually goes on for months. I mean, it has personally with me. Like I said, I'm speaking from experience. You know, and I just need you to try to imagine the mental effect. And I didn't even mention the inmates that are already going through serious underlying mental stuff, you know what I'm saying? And you know, and they have a breakdown and they put them in solitary confinement. You know, I don't have the numbers of the inmates that with serious underlying mental conditions, but I'm pretty sure it's at least 50% of the population, the inmate population. So again, I want to get you guys to try to grasp the mental torture that is solitary confinement. In solitary confinement, you may also be told that you have to wait up to 30 days in order to use the phone. So you can't even call your loved ones or your family to let them know what's going on with you. So now they're worried and they're going through mental anguish, you know, as you are. So basically, solitary confinement is an easy temporary solution for the prison staff not to have to deal with difficult situations. And that's what we got to stop.
That's right.
And instead of it being something that's addressed immediately, it's their practice just to have you sit in solitary confinement for months before any steps are taken to help you. Now, bear with me, I'm working with a notebook. And in most instances of solitary confinement, they don't even turn off the light. You know, and this probably doesn't sound very harsh, but just take a second and try to imagine sleeping under a spotlight for months at a time. At one point, I spent 18 months straight in solitary confinement because the prison officials thought I may retaliate against a person who had previously assaulted me. So I was placed on lockdown for a year and a half. Now this is after being a victim of assault. So you can just imagine what I'm going through. You know, a guy snuck up behind me and hit me in the mouth with a lock tied to a belt. I detailed that incident again so you just can try to imagine the mental state I must have been in. Just having my teeth knocked out, and your solution is to lock me in a 10 by 12 box for a year and a half because you're apprehensive about me retaliating against the person who assaulted me or the others associated with him. You know, why not have a program in place for conflict resolution opposed to just telling me to sit here for a year and a half? Separated from everybody.
Unlock. Doing great.
The box.
Right.
Unlock the box. Unlock the box.
I was asked the mental effects that I feel the solitary confinement had on me. And I mean, it's hard to answer at this point, but it definitely did have an effect. Regards to my ability to feel completely at ease in social settings. You know, for instance, when I was asked to speak at this rally, I'm like, speak? You mean in front of people? There's no way I could do that. But at the same time, I understand that the importance of my experience has to be heard. But you probably can't imagine the anxiety I went through that I'm experiencing now, being in this social setting, after spending so much time in that setting. But I also know and understand the absolute importance of me conquering my anxiety. So, I really hope I was able to help some of you achieve a clear understanding of the abusive, somewhat medieval practices being done in our jails. And hopefully you'll be inspired to join this fight to put an end to this physical and mental torture. In 1995, after I was apprehended for the crime I committed, my punishment was for me to spend years separated from my friends and family, from my kids and my significant other. That's the punishment. That's the punishment. And that punishment is significant. Huh? All right. So I got a lot to say. And that punishment is significant. The helplessness, the feeling of not being able to help and support your family, missing out on the growth and development of your children, that's the punishment. Now, how many times have you had a bad day and needed to be consoled by your significant other? You can't get that in prison. So that's the punishment, a significant punishment. So everything else in the jails should be geared towards making inmates better, mentally stronger, more prepared and capable to successfully re-enter society. I'm wrapping up, man. Now, throughout my narrative, I tried to get you to imagine the mentally dark, lonely, destitute place that solitary confinement is. Now I want you to try to imagine solitary confinement as a place where dignity, respect, safety, and care matters. You know, they say that only two things in life are constant, and that's change and change. So let's end this torturous practice of solitary confinement. Thanks, everyone.
Care, not cages.
Care,
Not cages.
care.
Not cages.
I'd like to thank Damon Jones, and I'd like to move on forward with the rest of the speakers. Melissa with ACLU would like to come forward and explain the pose with you all. Thank you, Melissa.
Care? Care? Hi, everybody. My name is Melissa Wasser. I'm a policy counsel at the ACLU of DC. ACLU DC is committed to ending solitary confinement because it puts the public safety at risk, it wastes taxpayer dollars, and as you've heard today, it's inhumane and traumatic to those who have to endure it. Ending solitary confinement demands that we confront inequities in the criminal justice system and the racial bias driving them. So I want to talk for a second about solitary confinement in DC. In the years leading up to the COVID-19 pandemic, the Federal Bureau of Prisons noted that DC used solitary confinement 3 times more than the national average. During the height of COVID, the Department of Corrections held 1,500 people confined in their cells for over 500 days. And the lockdown didn't even stop the spread of COVID. Washington, D.C. had the highest community spread of COVID directly caused by mass incarceration. As you've heard, solitary does nothing to rehabilitate people, and it makes both violence in jail and rearrest more likely. Solitary confinement, even for short periods of time, inflicts unbearable pain, exacerbates or creates mental illness, and moves people to desperation, including acts of self-harm or dying by suicide. And in short, solitary confinement is cruel and ineffective, and it has no place here in DC. And solitary isn't even the only harm that we have in our jails. ACLU DC has had to sue the jail multiple times for unconstitutional conduct. That includes poor sanitations, unsafe conditions, and violating the rights of transgender women. Even the U.S. Marshals found systemic failures at the DC jail in 2021. And the DC Council needs to address all of these horrors, but today is about addressing solitary confinement. And we know that it's time to end solitary confinement at the DC jail, and I'm here to tell you that district voters know it too. A recent poll, yeah, give it up. A recent poll conducted by ACLU DC of likely 2024 general election voters in DC shows deep and widespread public support for ending solitary confinement at the jail. The box. This poll showed that more than half of DC voters support ending solitary confinement. 55% of DC voters oppose the use of solitary confinement at the jail. More voters oppose the use of solitary confinement than support it in all regions and all 8 wards of the city. All 8 wards want to end solitary confinement. And for example, in Ward 2, this bill was referred to the Committee on the Judiciary and Public Safety. In Ward 2, where Chair Brooke Pinto is the chair of that committee, 54% of voters oppose the use of solitary confinement, while just 14% support it. Over half. And even better, the more DC voters learn about solitary confinement, the more they want to end it. For example, when voters learned about the research on the effects of solitary confinement on public safety, 70% of them oppose solitary confinement. So this poll makes clear that district voters support our movement to end torture in the DC jail. And I'll just point out, thanks to ACLU-DC, DC Justice Lab, and the Unlock the Box Coalition, we have a new white paper out called Breaking Through Isolation, the urgent case for the Erase Solitary Confinement Act in the DC jails. And as Councilmember Nadeau mentioned, and thank you for your leadership, with 8 bill sponsors, co-sponsors, and co-introducers, it's clear that the Erase Solitary Act is gaining momentum. We are winning in DC. And we will make sure that the district can be a leader in ending solitary confinement. So today we're calling on Chair Brooke Pinto to schedule a hearing on the Erase Solitary Confinement Act. We need a hearing on this important bill now. I'm excited to advocate with you all today and finally erase solitary confinement in DC once and for all. Let's get to work.
Repeat after me. I believe. I believe that. I believe that we. I believe that we will. I believe that we will win. 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 Give it up for Herbie, everybody.
As we all heard from Melissa, and I thank you again, Melissa, all 8 wards agree with ending solitary confinement. So we have DC as a whole, like it's kid, not cages. Kid.
Not cages.
Kid.
Not cages.
Kid.
Not cages.
With that, I'd like to introduce Maurice Dixon with Voices Unbarred. He has a powerful poem to share with us today.
Good morning, everybody. I am a returning citizen. My name is Maurice Dixon. I am a Washingtonian. I was born and raised right here in Washington, D.C. Being a returning citizen gives me the authority to speak on someone who has absolutely experienced solitary confinement and the penal system and the penalty in which they deliver. I want to thank everybody that's out here that's standing on the front line. Councilwoman, thank you, along with 2 of my favorites, McDuffie and White. Them are my guys, right? I want to thank the ACLU. I want to thank Unlock the Box. I want to thank Voices Unbarred, who I am a member of, right? And everyone that is standing out here and wanting to fight for change. So let me just say this. When you spend 23 hours locked in and only get 1 hour of recreation that is put inside of a dog cage, what do you think that does to the mentality?
Turn him to a dog.
What do you think it makes him feel like? A grown man inside of a cage to exercise that's no larger than this and no taller than this. He has to scoop to get in, and he has to be inhumane to turn around to have you unlock his chains and unlock his feet. Is he not going to be angry? So what do we do with that anger when he has to go back to that little wall, hold that space for 23 more hours? Just to help my brother Damon Jones to give y'all a picture. I want to thank everybody that came before me. Natasha, thank you. Thank you, Damon. And Councilwoman, thank you. My poem was written while I was inside of one of them steel cages. And the poem is called Steel Cage Blues. Thoughts accumulate repetitiously inside this steel cage. Unable to use that which is natural, I am suspended in time, yet I still age. Daily the sun rises, and so do I. Days perpetuate towards sunset. I logically stimulate by any means necessary that I may never forget the pain, loneliness, heartaches, misery, sleepless nights. Forget disparity, degradation, inhumanity, emasculation, slavery, and bestiality. Forget anger, frustration, infantile treatment, innovation, mental, physical, emotional, spiritual depletion. Forget the lost moments, the lost memories, and faded dreams. Forget lost families, lost desires, swallowed by life's energetic fire. Forget in this steel cage, I am bound. Seemingly, life's futility is resound. As thoughts accumulate repetitiously, I fight to remain awake. In this life's perplexity, I covet to forever fall asleep in my steel cage blues.
Hey, hey! Ho, ho! Solitary has got to go!
Ho ho, solitary has got to go. Hey hey, ho ho, solitary has got to go. Hey hey, ho ho, solitary has got to go. Again, as everybody came before me spoke, I'd like to thank you all, Councilwoman Nadeau, right, for being here. I'd like to thank you all for introducing the bill, and I'd like to thank all the speakers for coming out and all you all for joining us today. Like, this means a lot to so many people that's not here, you know what I'm saying, that can't fight for themselves, that don't have a voice right now. Thank you all, my gratitude. The Unlock the Box community, those who have joined in person and those who are watching at home, we have heard incredible stories about the people we love, what's at stake now, and why the DC Council need to pass the erase bill. As we close out, I want to remind everyone about the power of hope and the power of action. And I'd like to ask you all to continue on with your action, like take someone's information, take someone's contact, like keep the action going from this point on. Let's, you know, come together and keep this action moving forward. It's a bit.ly with the capital E, R-A-S-E, capital H, E-A-R-I-N-G. Take the bit.ly and submit your email to your council members. You know, those that's gonna stay behind for the, we're gonna meet in room 103. You go through the security and through the doors, and it's to the left. We're gonna get together after the photos. And again, I appreciate you all for being here. Care, not cages. Care, not cages. Care, not cages. Care, not cages.
Y'all give it up here.
Rally, Jack. You got the rally.